So,
So,
this was a great frontier for you
yeah,
personally to cross over into a paranormal theory about this stuff.
yeah. I was raised in the strict materialist point of view that the only things that were real were things that you could touch, knock, eat, look at, and here people were telling me experiences that could not be photographed, corroborated, yet from their point of view, this was as real as me standing in front of them. And all the people I talked with were describing the exact same experiences without benefit of any kind of details in the media that could account for
To
that.
cue that. Well, do you think that this is something that's been going on for millennia, or that this is suddenly an event with a historical element to it, and that it is recent and therefore building towards some sort of resolution?
There are folklorists who say that we have been visited by little people for centuries, if not for millennia. But this form of visitation has a hard edge to it that is different than what we've seen before. It started with the Betty and Barney Hill case, and since then there have been hundreds and moving now into the thousands of reported cases which have a kind of structure to it which is unlike what we've had before. There are similarities to previous visitations, but the modern abduction phenomenon has a distinction which has to be studied in its own right.
And do you have an interpretation of what that distinction implies? Is it apocalyptic? Is it technological? What is it?
Well, I first had to satisfy myself about what the phenomenon was, that it was not psychosis, it was not some strange dissociative condition, not some neurosis, not some contagion from the media. In fact, it has no resemblance to any psychiatric condition that in my 40 years of work in this field I had recognized. It's not some displaced abuse, all those things which naturally my colleagues and I think of in relation to this. This has its own structure, its own quality. Otherwise sane people having these highly traumatic, very dense, highly articulated, detailed, congruous experiences, which can begin to be reported in children as young as 2 years old, associated with UFOs in otherwise sane people. So I had to start by satisfying myself that this was not something else. Okay. Then I can begin not from my own speculations, but from the information that the abductees themselves get from the experience. I'm beginning to put together a structure of what this is about. And what I'm getting is that if you could think of the divine, or if you can think of the world of both spirit with form and spirit without form, or the anima mundi, whatever your language for it, the Great Spirit, the Holy Spirit, whatever it is, we have lost contact with it. It signals us we don't listen. There are various ways that certain people have revelations and experiences. Occasionally, the more advanced spiritual people among us are reconnecting with the Spirit. But for most of us, the only language that we know now is the language of the material world. So it's as if the divinities say, okay, if that's all you understand, I'll give it to you in the material world. I'll give you physical manipulations, I'll give you reproductive connection, I'll give you cuts, scars, scoop marks, I'll give you burned earth where the UFOs land, and I'll give you an experience which is consistent among various people, which empirically everybody agrees, they're photographs of UFOs. It's showing up in the physical world. It may not be of the physical world as we know it, but it communicates in the physical world, and when something shows up in the physical world that belongs in the spirit world, that gets the stiff-necked materialists very excited. Now they want physical proof, just like in empirical science, because all other faculties of knowledge have been atrophied. But this gets their attention because it shows up in the language we understand, which is the physical language.
You link it to the anima mundi, then do you think of it as an ecological danger signal, that it's a message from an Earth intelligence, perhaps the Earth
There are
intelligence?
two pieces of evidence that suggest that that's true. One is that the abductees themselves on the ships receive intense messages about ecological destruction, annihilation of whole forest systems, pollution of the water system, visions of the planet dying, and they see that on television-like screens. They get it through telepathic communication, and these are not environmentalists, these people. They are people who are very simple, ordinary people, unremarkable, except that they are getting this extraordinary information. And they actually become intensely, passionately concerned about the Earth and what's happening to the Earth, and their children do, because their children may be abducted as well. So that's one piece of information. The other piece of information is they experience themselves as not in control, being taken against their wills, being treated the way we treat animals, tagged with implants, having physical, emotional experiences in which they're utterly terrified and without being able to control what's going on. And that, for them, brings home how we treat other creatures on the planet, our kind of, as was discussed at this conference in Prague by Ralph Metzner, this kind of humanistic arrogance, as if the only creatures that were really important on the planet were ourselves, and we were superior in some way to all of the life forms. This phenomenon shows us that we are being treated the way we treat animals, as if they existed only for our pleasure, and they totally transform how they treat animals, how they treat the earth, how they relate to the environment around them. So through this experience in the body, because that's the important point here, this experience is not just information in an intellectual sense. They experience these abductions in the body, and as several abductees have said to me, we only know the body now as embodied creatures. If you want to reach us, you have to reach us through the body, because that's the only language we understand. So that tells us that the creatures are real in some sense.
Well, in what sense? I suppose the future can only tell, but maybe it's part of the unraveling of the end of the millennium, some kind of union of spirit and matter. Well, John, I want to thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule of entertaining to come and talk to us.
Can I make one more point? Which you
Make it, dude.
Okay. If you want to shatter the Western mental structures, the Western mind, so to speak, which is now permeating the whole earth in its materialist, dualistic philosophy, the way you do it is you take something that's supposed to be in the spirit world, because even in the West we can make allowance for the spirit world, and we can study it through mythology, through religion, through imagination, through poetry. But the one unforgivable sin to the Western mind is when something that should be in the spirit world transgresses and shows up in the physical world. That traffic is the cardinal sin for the Western mind. So it has great power to shatter the belief structure of the Western mind when that occurs. And that's precisely what's occurring in this abduction phenomenon.
Very good point. Thanks very much for talking with me. Good, good, good.